Hello, folks. Dustin Zarni here. Welcome to Commissioner in a Car. Today is Monday, May 12th, and I'm talking about today the even year election law bill, EYEL, as it's been referred to, which has been ruled constitutional by the 4th Appellate Division last week. We'll get into that, but I also wanted to note that we'll also talk about something else at the end. So let's talk about this even year election law bill. That's the biggest news of this week, and it was a brief history. So what is the even year election law bill? Well, this was a bill passed in 2023 by the New York Senate and Assembly, and then signed, it was passed in June of 2023 and then signed into law in December of 2023 by Governor Kathy Hochul. And what it does is that it moves by statute many local offices that normally hold their elections on odd years, or a year like this, 2025, to move their offices to even years. So what are the offices that it affected? It was non-constitutional offices. So offices like DA, county clerk, sheriff, which can fall on an even year, but don't always fall on an even year. Those cannot be moved because those are in the Constitution. Also, city offices, like any offices inside New York City, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, those are protected in the Constitution, the New York State Constitution, as happening on odd years as well. So those offices cannot be, and judicial offices and village offices. Judicial offices are also protected in the Constitution because of when they land, and the village offices, they just left off. But what they did move were all town offices, all county legislatures, all county executives, county comptrollers. So all of those offices are moving. And what it does is it moves them to already established even year elections, which are federal elections for Congress and for the president, and of course Senate as well. Those happen in the even years, so 2s, 4s, 6, 8, 10. And the reason they moved them, the legislature decided they wanted to move them because of turnout in local years is extremely low. The odd years are extremely low, whereas turnout in federal years, gubernatorial and presidential elections, is much higher. And they wanted to align elections with the election years that more people are used to going out and voting. Shortly after the signing of the bill by the governor in early 2024, many counties, including ours, Onondaga County, joined a lawsuit to try to rule this law unconstitutional. It took several months for it to get in front of a judge. And then in October of 2024, Judge Neary here in Onondaga County ruled the law unconstitutional, and it was immediately appealed by the New York State Attorney General, who's defending the legislature and the governor in this, as well as myself, because I was a named party in the lawsuit, and because I was a named party in the lawsuit and I disagreed with Onondaga County's interpretation of the law, I was assigned my own attorney to act in my professional capacity and defend the law, which they did. Got a great attorney named Brad Hunt, who is Mackenzie Hughes, a very good attorney, assigned to me by the county attorney, but my own attorney, and zealously defending the law against Onondaga County and their chosen attorneys, as well as the other counties that chose it. Unfortunately, in October of 2024, it was ruled unconstitutional by Judge Neary, and it was immediately appealed. However, all of the people involved in the lawsuit, including my side and the other side, wanted to have this go straight to the Court of Appeals in New York because it's a constitutional issue. and bypassing the appellate division. Even though that was what we wanted, and that is what all sides agreed, the Court of Appeals took a couple of months and then decided in March of this last year to send the case back down to the appellate division to be heard there first. The fourth department, appellate division, was the one assigned to hear it, and they put it on a fast track on the election law calendar, which was this last week. Actually, yes, right? Yeah, it was May 6th. They heard oral arguments. There was a briefing schedule and all of that, and then shortly thereafter, a couple of days after, I think it was Thursday. So a couple of days after, they came down with a ruling, and a 5-0 bipartisan unanimous decision saying that the overturn Judge Neary and have the law be constitutional, which means that it's in effect. So it has been appealed to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals has decided to wait until September to hear it. They gotta wait. But in essence, this law is now in effect, and it's a transformative law in New York. So I wanted to spend a podcast on it, even though that there's still one more appeal that could happen on this, and will happen. But whether it gets overturned or not, I personally have always felt that this law was constitutional. I have always felt, and the question about whether it's constitutional or not is whether county charters can be overridden by the state legislature per the New York Constitution. I think it's pretty clear now that it can be. But I'm sure we'll have another zealous argument in September. But because this will kind of affect elections this year, I wanted to dedicate a podcast to tell you what is happening with this, and if the law is continue to be upheld, what will happen later this year and next year. The first thing I got to put out there is no elections are canceled for this year. Every election that is on the ballot for this year going forward is going forward. But many of them will have their terms shortened. So to start aligning with even years over the next 2 to 3 years, to the point where by the time we hit 2030, all of these local offices that are affected by this bill are then now running in even years. So who does that affect the most of this year? Well, I think the people it affects the most are anybody on a 2-year term. These would be your county legislatures, your town board members, some town supervisors. They're on 2-year terms, and they are now going to be truncated to a 1-year term. So if they win office in November, they are going to have to run again next November in an even year, in a gubernatorial year. And why is that such a big deal? Well, I think everybody who's trying to rule the law unconstitutional thinks it's a big deal because they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. But taxpayer money, by the way, to do that. But what it really means is that in odd years, you have usually anywhere from 30 to 35% turnout, and that's actually pretty good. We've had lower than that in some odd years in the November election. Not primaries, by the way, the November election. In gubernatorial years, you'll have anywhere, and this is Onondaga County numbers, but it's reflective all across the state. Maybe not the actual percentages, but the jumps in turnout. In gubernatorial years, you will have 55 to 60% turnout, and in presidential years, 72 to 78% turnout. So it could be double the turnout of a local year in a presidential year, and 50% more turnout, or maybe even more, 66% more turnout in a gubernatorial year than an average a local year, maybe even double. So double, triple the turnout in some of these cases. So that's more people voting, and a lot of people will say, well, yeah, but if there's more offices, the ones on the end will be left blank. Well, statistics will show that yes, while there is a drop off from the top to the bottom, the drop off is nowhere near the drop off from odd to even years. And still, raw data will show that more people will vote in these local elections than have ever voted before in the odd years. So that argument's invalid. So your county legislators, your town board members, your town supervisors are on 2-year terms. They're going to be on 1-year terms and run again next November. Now, there are a collection of town offices that are on 4-year terms that are being elected this year. Those town offices will become a 3-year term and have their next election be in the 2028 election for a full 4-year term. So then they will be aligned with that presidential cycle as opposed to the gubernatorial cycle. Now, there are some offices that were elected last year 2 years ago on a 4-year term in 2023. That was county executive, DA, county clerk, and county comptroller. Well, DA and county clerk are left exempt on this. So really we're talking about county executive and county comptroller. Those two offices that are elected in Onondaga County on a 4-year term that were elected in 2023, they will serve their full 4-year term until 2027. And then in 2027, they will run for a 3-year term and then be on the gubernatorial cycle starting in 2030. So that's the last bit of the cycle. So you will see a lot of people move next year to the gubernatorial, and then a fair amount of people move from to the presidential year in 2028, and then there's a couple of offices that will have to wait till 2030 to be on the even year cycle. So, as I said before, there is an appeal that is headed towards the Court of Appeals. The reminder: the Court of Appeals in New York is the top court. It goes Supreme Court, Appellate Division, Court of Appeals. So I think I went off camera there. But Supreme Court is the lowest court. That's the first court. That's Judge Neary who heard it. The Appellate Division was the 4th department that heard it this last May 6th and ruled it constitutional, 5-0, bipartisan. Important to put that in there. And now the Court of Appeals will hear it. I believe, and my lawyers believe, and the argument will believe, is that the New York State Legislature, whether you agree with the law or not, had the authority to do this. And just like they had the authority to create pre-counting of absentee or pre-canvassing of absentees and early vote by mail, all of these things were done under the legislature's authority to regulate elections. And all of those things were challenged, and all of those things have failed their challenge. And I believe eventually that that is what will happen here with the even year election law bill, or the EYEL. And it will be ruled constitutional by the Court of Appeals, as it was ruled constitutional by a unanimous vote of the 4th Department. Now, I don't believe that this is the last we'll hear of so-called election alignment bills. The authors of the bills, I've talked to Senator Skoufis and Assemblywoman Paulin, and in their floor debates and also in their press talking after, they have said that if this is ruled constitutional, they're going to move forward with a constitutional amendment that will align cities with even years. Worth noting that the New York City Charter is thinking about already doing that ahead of this. So we may, see some cities decide to voluntarily move. But also to address the constitutional offices like DA, county clerk, and sheriff. You may notice that I didn't say sheriff. That's because in Onondaga County, the sheriff already is on an even year. It's on the gubernatorial cycle. And that's because DA, sheriff, and county clerk, and judges run for full terms no matter when that office becomes vacant. And that's why they couldn't do it in this election law, because that's what the Constitution says for all of those things. They have to come up with a way, a constitutional change that would allow that if an office becomes vacant in the middle of a cycle, that this person runs only for the remainder of the term instead of getting a full 4 year, so they can keep their cycle on an even year. And you may remember that, those of you may remember that our county clerk used to be on the presidential cycle, but then a county clerk, Schlepp, decided to retire early to take the commissioner of jurors job in an odd year, moving that election to the odd years ever for more. Maybe it had something to do that in the presidential election we almost beat them in that county clerk, but it didn't matter anyways because we beat them last in 2023. The Democrats did that, and they did that in the odd years. So this isn't about whether Democrats can win in odd years or Republicans can't win in even years. Republicans can win in even years, Democrats can win in odd years. It's about having more people vote on the ballot, choosing their leaders, and then eventually it may save some money. But I want to be very clear, that is not going to happen right away, because many elections are still going to be held on the odd years, because we have to wait for these other laws to be passed. And so it'd probably be 10 years before New York, if it ever gets that far, has all elections on even years. And there are other states that do that. Hawaii and a few other states do that. So it's something to think about going forward. But it's going to take a long time for that to happen. That being said, this first stage of moving is going to be very important. It's going to be a big sea change, and it really changes the way next year looks. Next year is a gubernatorial year. We saw that there was going to be a lot of congressional and business, but now all of these offices that are up this year are up again next year, and instead of having 33% turnout, they're going to have, probably if next year is anything like 2018, where we saw a massive turnout in a gubernatorial year right after the election of President Trump the first time, we could see another massive turnout year in 2026. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and whether people running for office will, adjust to that, and because they have to talk to more of their constituents than they normally would. So that's it on the even year election law bill. I can't go today's podcast without talking about Van Robinson. His service, his celebration of his life was today, and talk about who's who. I mean, there's so many elected officials there. The governor was there, Attorney General Letitia James was there. Just so many people that this great man who chose Syracuse as his home, affected throughout his career. And I want to share a story that I had about Van Robinson, because he was a formative person in my political life as well. Back in 2010, I was working for the city of Syracuse, and but I was an advocate for fair redistricting, as you know. And this is before I became commissioner. And Van asked me, along with a couple people from his Common Council office, to come up with some ideas about how to reformat the city of Syracuse 5 district councilors, because it was around the time period to do that. It was like 2011, 2012. It was right after the 2010 census. And Van tried as hard as he could to get together a citizen commission that had people from other walks of life, and he couldn't get the councilors at the time to agree that that was not only the right decision, but that they should redistrict at all. And they ended up not redistricting City of Syracuse Common Council districts for that entire cycle. So, I remember sitting in his office with me, and I believe it was a guy named Craig who was there as well. And we were all disappointed that we couldn't get agreement on it. And he said, Dustin, really, citizens should be drawing this, not politicians. That's the problem. I remember him saying that to me. And then I saw what happened with the redistricting inside the county legislature that year. And that's why I decided I had to run for elections commissioner the next time it was come up, because I could be an advocate for fair districting. That I have been an advocate for fair districting, and inside the city of Syracuse now, we're one of the few cities that have a citizen-led redistricting commission. And it's all because Van Robinson, while I was sitting in his office, told me that citizens need to be doing this. And that formed a lot of my political career, and it still does. And today was an amazing day to see so many people that were celebrating his life, and he touched so many people in so many ways. And one of the highlights was Governor Hochul getting up there, and we're talking about Van's dedication to I-81 and taking the viaduct down inside the city of Syracuse. And she proclaimed that she will make sure that when that project is finished and we have that new arterial from the I-81 roundabout to the center of the city, that arterial will be called Van Robinson Way, because she wants people to walk down that street and know that it was Van Robinson's way of doing things, of why he got it done. Integrity, humility, passion, and dedication. That was Van Robinson. And Syracuse will miss him, but he'll be etched across our skyline forevermore because of the contributions that he made to our city. So thank you, Van. Thank you for being an inspiration even when you didn't know you were, and thank you even more for when you stood up for what was right. So sad to see him leave us, but I know that he's looking up on us and calling us all to be better. So that's all I got for this week. Next week, mail check cards are going out, and so next week I will have a special dedicated to the mail check cards that'll be hitting your mailboxes today, tomorrow, and also absentee ballots for the primary will be starting to go out this next weekend. So that's what next Monday will be about. Thank you very much, and go to DustinZarni.com to subscribe or comment on any thing, or find out about all election news and content updates. Bye-bye.